Ethan Cole had built his life on promises, spoken, written, and silently kept, even when others broke theirs. And that was why the empty chair at the small pine table cut deeper than hunger ever could. The mail-order bride he had waited for, through 2 winters, and a summer of hope was gone. Her letter short and careful, explaining she had met someone else in the city and could not bear the quiet loneliness of a ranch buried between mountains and sky. And Ethan folded the paper with steady hands, though something inside him splintered all the same. He did not curse her, did not burn the letter, did not even speak her name aloud. He simply rose before dawn the next day and hired a housekeeper, because the ranch still needed running and grief, like dust only settled if you stopped moving. That was how Clara May stepped into his life. Quiet boots, eyes the color of storm water, hands roughened by work and loss, never asking questions she didn't need answered, never stepping into spaces that weren't offered, and yet somehow filling the house with a warmth Ethan hadn't known was missing until it returned. She cooked meals that tasted like patience, cleaned rooms that had been abandoned to memory, and spoke only when silence had finished its work. And over time Ethan found himself waiting, not for a letter, not for a promise, but for the sound of her humming as she worked. Clara had come to the ranch with her own past, folded tightly away, a promise once made to herself, never to love a man who already carried another woman's shadow. And yet every day tested her resolve as she saw the gentleness in Ethan's strength, the way he spoke to horses as if they were old friends, the way he never raised his voice even when storms broke fences and futures alike. Town gossip drifted in like smoke, about the bride who fled, about the housekeeper who stayed, and Clara heard it all without answering, because she believed goodness didn't need defense. One night, when a storm trapped them inside and the lantern flickered low, Ethan spoke of the woman who had promised him forever and left, him with only a house too quiet for sleep. And Clara listened without judgment, without jealousy, without hope, and that somehow was what cracked his armor. She didn't try to replace anyone. She didn't compete with a memory. She simply stayed, and in staying, she began to matter more than anyone ever had. But both of them knew the line they were not supposed to cross. And when the past returned, in the form of a letter stamped from the city, Clara nearly packed her bag before she ever read it, afraid that promises once broken still had the power to reclaim what they'd abandoned. That night, Ethan stood alone again at the table, letter unopened, realizing too late that the greatest promise he had ever needed was the one he never dared to ask. For the letter from the past remained sealed as days stretched thin and heavy, because Ethan had learned that some truths demand readiness, not courage. And Clara sensed the distance growing between them even as she worked harder than ever to pretend nothing had changed. She told herself she was only a housekeeper, that love was not part of her wages, that hearts were not rooms meant to be cleaned and claimed. And yet when Ethan finally spoke, voice low, eyes honest, telling her he hadn't opened the letter because it no longer mattered, the world shifted in a way neither of them had prepared for. He confessed that somewhere between shared meals and quiet evenings, between trust and understanding, his heart had chosen her without asking permission from the past. And Clara, trembling, admitted the promise she had broken was her own too. Never fall for a man whose pain she could not erase. They did not rush toward happiness. They stepped into it carefully, knowing love built on truth lasted longer than love born of escape. When the former bride finally appeared in town, expecting regret and reclaiming, she found instead a man who wished her well and a woman who did not flinch, because kindness had already won what promises could not keep. The ranch changed, not in grand ways, but in the soft permanence of laughter returning, in the way mornings felt less heavy, in the quiet certainty that love does not always arrive as promised, but sometimes is needed. Clara stayed not because she replaced someone, but because she was chosen, not out of loneliness, but out of recognition. And Ethan learned that the heart does not belong to vows written in ink, but to those proven in action. As the seasons turned, the house filled with life again, and the chair at the table was no longer empty. And if this story stirred something in you, the belief that broken promises don't end destinies, that love can grow in unexpected places, then remember to subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that sometimes the one who stays becomes the one who saves us, and the quiet hearts are often the ones that love the deepest.